Blessings and peace, blessings and peace. I am back. We're going to see if we can get this thing done again. Hopefully, there is um, um, we've gotten this resolved and fixed because we were doing echoing, but I should be good now. If you can, all right, I'm just checking it out. So we were dealing with if we can make sure there's no echo about, and I'll see if I can briefly, because y'all heard a whole lot of it. So just let me briefly go through it so that y'all can get the logistics of it. I'll just do a brief overview, and I can be done soon so that we can make sure that we get this in. So for those you didn't hear, we dealt with the course of this world, which is being conformed to this present world. All right, do I got an echo? Am I good? Am I good? I should be good. So we talked about not being conformed to this world, and we dealt with the word conform means to be fashioned to. And we know the world is dealing with the age or the ion. And we talked about not being conformed to this world, right? The way that everybody else does it is not the way that you need to do it. The way that everybody else is going, you don't need to go. This is why we say don't follow the crowd, follow the cloud. You don't go the same direction that everybody is going. You don't have to do things the way that everybody else is doing them. You don't conform to this world. You be shaped the way that God shaped you, because people are bad about trying to conform you to the way that they want you to be conformed, because they'll get a picture of themselves and try to conform you to that. While I'm there, David, what made David different is that for him to fight Goliath, right? They said you need to put on Saul's armor, and David put it on, and he said, "This don't fit me." They said, "Well, this is the way that the king's soldiers fight. This is how you fight when you're in the military. You put on this armor." And David was like, that don't fit me. And David did not conform to it, because David was different. He knew he was different, and he was like, I'm not comfortable with that. I need to do it the way that I need to do it. And the reason why you need to know that, because people will get a picture of you and try to conform you to their image and not the image that God has given you. They'll conform you to what they think about you versus what God has said to you. So you have to watch and make sure that you don't become conformed to the way that everybody else thinks, because people are still conformed by the world or that age, and they want you to be alike, do alike, so that they can be comfortable. So we've gotten past that, and that is the age. So whenever you're in a certain age, God is going to always challenge you. One thing about apostles are not, we are reformers, not conformers. So I need to bless somebody with that right there. Whenever you set up on the real apostles, they are reformers, not conformers. A lot of times people conform because it's safe, and they don't want to rustle the feathers. Apostles are known for being pioneers, and they come in and restructure. We don't conform, we reform things that are, we break all those boundaries, and that's just in me. If you tell me this is the way that it's always been done, I'm going to ask you why. And if you can't give it to me biblically and it makes perfect sense, line up on line, I will come in and reform it. Like, no, this is what it actually should be being done. And the reason why this is important is because we're talking about how to shift or how to change your mind. That's where we're at. How to be different, how to do something different for the new year, so that you don't be stuck in the last year. And if you conform, you'll always be stuck with the people that are just like you, look like you, talk like you, walk like you. And you'll see crowds of people just so that everybody can go along, because whenever you conform, you become comfortable. The world is comfortable as long as everybody is conformed. There's some stuff I could say, but it would get me in some trouble. And I really want to say it. Oh my God, I'll come back to it later on, because there are certain things that are Bible and some things that are not. People of the world think a certain way, and mind you, it's just not talking about the world as the age, as it relates to some of the things. When we're dealing with the world, we're dealing with the age. Well, in this time, everybody does it like that. Apostles don't do that. Remember, when it comes to shifts, apostles are made to help people shift to another level. If you don't want to be on another level, you don't want to deal with apostles, because the word apostle, whenever they dealt with apostles in the old world, An apostle also meant a passport, which apostles give you a passport to go to a place you wouldn't be able to get there on your own. That's what apostles do. They help you get to places you wouldn't be able to get on your own. And God designed that. And so whenever we're dealing with apostles, we're dealing with pioneers. We're dealing with people who reform. You know, Martin Luther is well known because the Catholic Church had everything the way that they did it, and he came in and he looked at everything and he said, this ain't Bible, that ain't Bible, and he became a reformist. As a matter of fact, that's what a Protestant is, somebody who protested because they did not want to be conformed to that age. And that's what Martin Luther is known for. Jesus was not a person who conformed. He is a person who reformed. He reformed. He said, hey, you can't make me conform to this. They tried to make him conform to the present way that they did things, and Jesus, he didn't do that. He was a reformist. And so those that God called a pioneer will always see who wants to reform and not just be conformed to that age. And again, that's what the world is. It is an age. So we talked about that. Listen again, if you're going to be something different, you can't be fearful of what people are going to think, what people are going to say. Let's move to the next one so we can get back to where we was at. This is for people who want to change their lifestyle, people who want a difference, people who want to see something different, know something different, and be something different. If you're comfortable, then you'll conform. If you're uncomfortable, you'll look around and say, that ain't me. So it says, be ye transformed. And we talked about transformed, right? We dealt with that word for transform. I'm just briefly giving this to people who hadn't had a chance to check it out, and we'll transform, metamorphism. That's what a butterfly or a caterpillar does. It goes into a cocoon and it is transformed or goes through a metamorphism. When it comes out different and it comes out new. I need somebody to get that. Whenever you are being transformed, it's okay if they say you think you knew. It's okay if you're not the same as you were last year. That just proves that you have been transformed. Not everybody likes people who transform. But again, they want to be comfortable with you being like them in the place that they was at. And I can't do it. I'm sorry. And nobody who really has an assignment, a mandate, something that God has told you to do, something God has told you to be, should ever be the same. You should always be transformed. So how do you transform? How do you become a different person? How do you become a new you? How do you become a better version of yourself? This is easy. By the renewing of your mind. And this is where we were at. And this is where I'm going to sit at for a moment so we can get this done and over with. How do you renew your mind? The word there for renewing means renovation. And we talked about this. Whenever you go into a house, if you want to get a better version of that house, you have to renovate it. And the first thing that you talked about when I talked about renovation is cost. Again, this is just a recap. To renovate, it is going to cost you something. I'm saying that again. There's a cost associated with renovation. So whenever you begin a renovation, you are going to have to be, your life is being renovated. It's going to cost you something. Again, it could cost you friends. It could cost you family. It could cost you a marriage. It can cost you anything. And people don't believe that. People quote the Bible, but they don't believe it. As a matter of fact, Jesus said it like this. He said, if any man is going to follow me, take up his cross and follow. He must first take up his cross. Now listen to what Jesus said. You got to put him first. Jesus said that if you're going to put him first, it could cost you mother, father, brother, sister, husband, wife. This is the reality. This is what transformation looks like. This is what renovation looks like. And he said, do you think I come to bring peace? I come to bring a sword. What is a sword? I come to set at variance the father against the son, the mother against the daughter, the husband and wife. God does not care about any of that, because when it comes down to God, it's renovation. You shift and change and somebody doesn't. God doesn't care about all of the other stuff. It is God's will in the end that matters. And I think people get so comfortable with it's got to look like this, it's got to look like that they don't understand what a renovation actually looks like. God is good about renovations. So the other thing about renovation is it is to update. I'm just going to be honest. I could go look in my closet, and if I see a bunch of old clothes, I say it's time for me to get some new clothes. That's a renovation. If you go into a house, and I talked about this, your favorite chair, it's been there for 10 years, but the spring is coming up out of it. It's slumped down. It's lost its lackluster, and you still sitting there because you're comfortable, and somebody says, you need to get a new couch. You need to get a new chair. No, I just like this one. Okay, but you need to renew. You need to update. A lot of people never update themselves. They're still the same version of themselves before they got saved, after they got saved. Or they're the same version of themselves 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And they have never updated anything. And the funny thing about it is, when people, you should be changing enough in a positive way that when people talk to you, there should be a difference in the way that you think about stuff. Well, you used to think like that, yeah, but I've been renovating, having a look at things. And because if you do what you've always done, you'll get the results that you've always got. So there has to be a renewing, a renovation, and that is a shift. Whenever you're going to renovate a house again, you come in, you look in, you say, okay, I need to paint, I need to change this, I need to change that. That's called renovation. It's going to cost you something, and it's going to be some labor involved. So whenever there is a renovation, it is going to come with some cost, it is going to come with some labor. And whenever you are renovating something, thank you, Holy Ghost. Watch this. People come in and they see renovation. A renovation looks like a mess because the person who's renovating is the only one who actually sees the vision of what it's going to look like when it's done. I'm going to say that for somebody right now. It looks like it is a mess because you're tearing things down, you're moving stuff out on the floor. This is being moved, that is being moved. You get paint here. As a matter of fact, I'm renovating. I'm renovating a house right now. I'm renovating a house, my house. Now watch this right here. At that house that I'm renovating, it was a mess. I want you to understand this. I came in and I looked and I said, boy, this is a mess. But as me and my wife began to go through it, it just got worse. It just, you try to clean it up, and the more you clean it up, the more mess it ends up creating. You know why? Because there are shifts that are taking place. And sometimes whenever you are renovating something, it looks bad. There's wallpaper being removed. It's sanding. It's dust. It's overspray. It's all of this stuff. But the more you keep on renovating, the better it starts to come together. And then you start seeing this is what it is going to look like. Now, I'm going to bless somebody prophetically with that. Sometimes when there's a renovation taking place, it looks like it's a mess because things are being shifted, things are being moved, but you know what the vision actually looks like in the end. Don't let nobody change your mind about that. There is a renovation that is taking place in the way that you think. Because this renovation that takes place, because before you can change your life, you first got to change your mind. You change your mind, everything about you changes. Your whole destiny, your whole trajectory changes once you change your mind. Renewing of the mind. Now, what is the mind? The mind is the psyche. This is why for years, and I still do it to this day, I study psychology, because whenever you're dealing with church and you're dealing with people in the church, you're always dealing with people's psychology and why they think, why they act a certain way. It's all based in psychology. When people don't understand that the mind dictates the behavior, the words, the actions, and the whole thing, they don't get it. They say, well, I'm just going to do this, or I'm going to say that because that's what I've always done. That's what I've always said. That just shows you that you haven't got an understanding about the old man versus the new man. The old man is corrupt. The new man is enlightened with the knowledge of God. So there has to be a renewing of the mind. The renewing of the mind is not just your thinking. It is also your heart. Because those things are compatible. This is what the mind entails. It is the soul of a man. So not only does your mind have to change, but you have to have the right heart posture. And what we end up finding out is that if your heart has not been renewed, this is why God talks about the circumcision of the heart. Because your mind, so let me slow this down for just a moment. The most two important organs that you have to live are your heart and your brain. If your brain stops, right? Stops, if somebody is brain dead, they're still alive as long as their heart is pumping. They just brain dead, but the heart is still pumping, right? So when the brain goes and the heart goes, it's over with. And it's amazing to me that when God is dealing with us, he talks about renewing of the mind and creating me a clean heart, renewing me a right spirit. The mind and the heart are still the two most important things that it takes for transformation. If your heart is not in the right place, it's going to be a problem for you to be renewed or transformed. If your mind is still in the same place, it's going to be hard for you to become renewed or transformed. What is the purpose of being transformed by the renewing of your heart or your mind? Guess what it does? Once you have a transformation with a renovation of the way that you think, of the way that you feel, that you may be able to prove, not just say what is the, see, a lot of people will say, well, this is what God is doing. No, it says that you may be able to prove. That means without a doubt. What is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God? Now, without, listen to this, as long as you're conforming to the way that everybody does things, you'll never get the will of God. As long as you're not being transformed by having your mind renewed, you'll never get the perfect will of God. It'll never happen. Whenever you have a transformation and of you and a renewing of your mind, somebody needs to get this that really wants to change their life. That's when you begin to line up with God and you begin to come into the perfect will of God. Now, the perfect will of God has some proof to it. It is good and it is acceptable to who? People? No, to God. Because at the end, you don't have anything to prove to people. The only person that you have to prove something to is to God. Jesus did not have anything to prove to man. He just did what God said. People disapproved Jesus, but what Jesus did was approved and acceptable by God. As a matter of fact, if you look for everybody to accept what God wants for you in your life and what God is showing you and telling you, you can be accepted. The Bible said those things that are accepted by God are that are accepted by man are abominable to God. God does not care about what people think, what man thinks. God only cares about you being transformed, you doing a renewing of your mind and your heart, that you may prove what is the good and acceptable, now watch this word again, and perfect will of God. Life changing. Once your life begins to change, that's the will of God. Now mind you, what you had to go through. You had to go through not conforming to the way that everybody else does it. You had to go through being transformed like a caterpillar goes in and becomes a butterfly. Then you had to go through a renovation of the way that you think and the way that you feel, because the way you think and feel don't make it right. Let me say it again. Because you think something and you feel something, that does not make it right. There has to be a renewing. If your thoughts is the same way that it used to always be, or you feel the same way that you always felt, that don't make it right, because God does not base his word or how he does things on feelings. God doesn't operate on that. So these are the transformations you come through. Once you go through those transformations, you may be able to prove, not to nobody else, but to yourself, you may be able to prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect, not permissive, because God has a permissive will, and it is easy to fall into the permissive will of God versus the perfect will of God. Good example before we get ready to go. Abraham had two wives, Sarah and Hagar. One of them was permissive, the other one was perfect. God still used both. Both of them got used. Both of them, one brought Ishmael, one brought Isaac. The difference was the outcome. Ishmael is going to be blessed, but Isaac is what I really wanted for you. Are y'all getting this right here? Permissive versus perfect. It is through the transformation, and the only reason why that happened to Abraham is because He wanted God's perfect will, but when it took God too long, he just said, I'm just going to, his wife came up with this idea of a Hagar for them to have the child, and they'll help God out, and that's the way they wanted to help God. And God said, okay, you can help me. That's permissive. I will permit it, but that's not perfect. Isaac was perfect. And if you want the perfect will of God, it's going to cost you something. It's going to take for you to go through a season in your life of being transformed, of being in a cocoon, isolated, where it's just you and God in isolation, sanctification. It is going to take a renovation of the way that you think. If you think the way you've always thought, that ain't going to work. You got to have a renewing of your mind. And this is why we got to constantly, let me say this before we close. This is why prayer is so important. If you don't pray and understand what prayer is, when you really go to pray, pray is really a reflection of yourself. This is how transformation happens. I'm a ride out on this one. When you're really praying, it really ain't about anything else first but you. You're looking, your prayer is for God to look, God, let me see me. Let me see my heart. Let me see my mind. Let me see the inner me. I'm not worried about nobody else right now. Before I pray for other people, let me pray for me. God, is there anything in me that needs to change as far as my heart? Is my heart in the right place? Is my heart pure? That's what it comes down to. That's the first process of prayer, is self-reflection. This is why the Bible said, work out your own soul salvation with much trembling and fear. I can't work out your soul salvation, but I can work out mine. As a matter of fact, I pray for people, but don't worry about their soul salvation, because I didn't come to save nobody. But when I go into prayer, there's the mirror. God, look at me. I want to look at me, the man in the mirror, because that's the only way a transformation can take place, is when God begins to show you things about the way that you think, the way that you feel, and he begins to align those things. Those are the things that align you up to the perfect will of God. And again, that's between you and God. That is between you and God. So we're getting ready to close out. But if you want a change or a shift in your life, and I'm not telling you what I heard, I'm telling you what I got proof of, evidence. I'm not in the same place I was last year. Now, I don't think the same way that I did last year. There ought to be some evolving. People who don't evolve, that's a problem. That's a real problem. If we talked to you in 5 years ago, that's the only conversation you got, and you still thinking the same way, you haven't grown. And a lot of times, when you're being transformed, I need to throw this out here, you will outgrow people simply because they don't want to grow. They're comfortable with being conformed. And again, apostles and people that God has sent out, they're not there to conform. They're there to reform and push you to do something different. Push you to, hey, let's look at this from a different angle. Let's try this. And I've never been one afraid to fail. I'll just go with it. So that is my time as we get ready to go. My prayer is that you will have the perfect will of God. But again, you can't conform and do what everybody else is doing. You got to get some time to be transformed, a metamorphism, and you got to have a renewing or a renovation of the way that you think and your heart posture. If the heart and the mind are messed up, everything else is messed up. And some people's lives never change because their mind and their heart never change. And they stay stuck where they at and never go forward. And then try to get people to come to where they at, because misery loves company. So that is my time. I pray it's been a blessing to you. As I sign out, may God bless, cover, and keep you. And I'm praying in this new year, you will have a transformation, a renovation, even though it looks messy. The renovation looks messy, but when you get done with it, it'll look exactly what God said it's supposed to look like. In the end of that mess, it is going to be good and acceptable and the perfect will of